Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Friday edition of Meteorology Lab. Looking at the full moon coming up to the east and very pretty sunset off to the west. I don't think I've ever sent the drone up this late in the day. I might have to try getting some footage maybe towards twilight. That should look interesting. Take a look at the city lights and stuff. All right, so this evening, high pressure is receding out there in the southeastern U.S. You can see it right out here, 1024 millibar high, and that's a very cool air mass. Temperatures in the 50s for the most part. But we are getting southerly flow on the western side of that high pressure area. So there it is, flow turning around to the south, and let's check out where the moisture is. You can definitely see that offshore out in this area here. Try that again. 60s dew points in that region right there. Some of it is coming onshore up to the Laredo area. 55 dew points, about like this. So it's starting to snake its way up the Rio Grande, up to the Pecos Valley. So I would expect probably tomorrow we're going to see the dew points starting to come up in this region here. And this is the time of year when we start seeing the dry line become active out to the west. So we'll watch for that to become in position later this weekend. Elsewhere around the country, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, underneath that high pressure, but they're on the other side, getting that cold air advection from the north. Up in the northeastern U.S., also under the influence of that high pressure there, lots of air coming in from Canada, Quebec, Ontario, into Pennsylvania and New York there. Out over the Midwest, we've got a little bit of a low pressure system there around Rapid City. You can see the southerly flow coming up. And here we actually have a warm front running something like that from about Rapid City out towards Sioux Falls and out towards Rockford, Illinois. So north of that, you can see the northeast winds in that region, and there's overrunning taking place right there, just along and north of that warm front. So down to the south, you don't see very much weather at all. 50s, some stratocumulus here and there, gusty winds. But north of that front, we've got overcast east winds and even some snow from about Aberdeen up towards Bismarck. In the northern high plains, we've got a new Canadian front working its way southward. Leading edge is something like that right there, and you can see the gusty winds up to 35 knots in southeastern Montana. And very cold temperatures up there along the border region. In the northeast, pretty quiet there. Kind of a weak northwesterly flow, and you can see an artifact there from bad data. See that low pressure area? And if we look closely at the data, let's zoom in on that. And this is one advantage of digital atmosphere. You can go in and edit the data. So what we're looking for is sea level pressure. There's definitely not 967 millibars around there. So we can just delete that. Delete that. That looks good. That looks good. Okay. And then if we replot that, here's what we get. That little artifact there, it's gone. So the data looks more normal out in that area. So that's one of the advantages of having a plotting program like Digital Atmosphere. You can kind of change the data. Southwestern U.S., pretty quiet there. A little bit of a Pacific high, Great Basin high. This is what we usually see up in the plateau elevations. And that generates a lot of radiational cooling at night and kind of a sort of a semi-permanent weak cold air mass, and it kind of drains southward. So we tend to see northerly winds at Vegas and Flagstaff, Prescott out in that area. So we're just kind of in between systems right now, and I would say that the dominant player is up on the high plains. This system up to the north, probably structured somewhat like that there. And then we've got the lee side trough extending from Scottsbluff down to the Clayton area. So this will probably intensify over the next couple of days once the next wave comes in from the west. So the upper level patterns, let's definitely take a look at that. This is the 250 millibar analysis for about 12 hours ago. And there's kind of an ominous feature on here. I don't know if you can see it. Let me give you the background here. Large long wave trough covering much of the U.S. So the long wave is kind of centered about right here. And we've got embedded in that probably one deep trough in here. And there's a second trough right in here. It's kind of rounding that ridge. And this is likely to deepen as it moves to the southeast. You can see that's kind of digging into the backside of that trough. So we'll have to watch that on the model progs and see if that makes it into the central or southern U.S. Elsewhere, polar front jet, pretty much along that axis from Washington to Montana, and then down to about Missouri, and then back up to New York like that. So where's the frontal systems? Well, based on this, ridge offshore, trough here, we would normally look for it to be in this area. That would be our first starting point, because the warm air advection with this warm front here, that's what actually builds the ridge aloft right there. Now we have to consider that this is 6 in the morning, so any systems that are like that, they will have moved off to the east. So what do we actually have? Well, here's the latest map, and indeed we do have a system right there over the Maritimes. Cold front stretching across Nova Scotia and then down towards the area offshore of Cape Cod and Long Island. And we do have a lot of cold air coming south. We can see that out over the Canadian prairies. So it's very cold temperatures, -10 to -15 Celsius, leading edge of that cold air, something like that. And quite a bit of cold air up to the north. We've got other charts we can look at for that. Let me see if I can update digital atmosphere here with the latest Canadian data. This is kind of an unusual situation, that much cold air coming south. And let's see if that Canadian data is in yet. And there it is. Drifting snow up around the Saskatoon area there, out towards Calgary. And some of the coldest temperatures I see are probably around -10 Fahrenheit up in Nunavut here. All right, heading into the regular charts, let's look at the isobars and thickness. So there's our setup, and you can see all the cold air up there to the north. And then just a preliminary look at the fronts. There's the warm front, cold front extending up into British Columbia, and then possibly offshore, maybe something like that. So yeah, this is probably a little bit of a wave there. And then off the Atlantic coast, cold front right off Cape Cod and Long Island, and then warm front just south of Newfoundland there. Okay, this is the period where we usually pull up the satellite data and make sure the microphone's not off and all that good stuff. So there's a look at the current water vapor. And let's see who we got. Kind of a slow night. Usually Friday and Saturday are kind of like that, a little bit slow, especially with the fair weather. Got USA Forever is here. First one, and Erica Baker reporting Coffeyville, Kansas, 60 degrees. Electric Dog is here, and Shirley Keast mentioning a winter storm warning up there in Michigan. Half-inch of snow today. Very good. Although I'm sure you're probably eager to get out of that snowy pattern. David Holcomb is here checking in. Fun with Tech. Observing the moon there. Got Burl H. and Ryan Toomeys. Ryan is reporting mid-70s. Got the full moon there, also in Florida. Holiday weekend, everybody detaching from the usual grind. Meg and John reporting 31 degrees, waiting for the snow to start flying there in Minnesota. Blizzard warnings and all that great stuff. Got Mike Estwick with 50 degrees there in Denver. Mr. Manlet is recovering from the flu. Sorry to hear that. 44 in Rockford. Looks like a big Alberta clipper incoming. Mike Estwick reporting winds kicking up 15-20 miles an hour in Arvada, Colorado. Mike Wan is here, and David Moore got a break at work there, watching the webcast, and Tom J. joining us from Las Cruces. So people all over the country there checking out the weather. And if we have any viewers that are outside the U.S., I'd be very curious about that, because we can certainly cover the weather in your area too. We've done that too for Saudi Arabia and a couple of other places. Ahmed, yeah, he used to be with us about a year ago, and we were watching some weather out there back then. Okay, so here you can see some of the ridging right there in Colorado, out towards Kansas. So that's probably a kind of a shortwave ridge, probably. And then behind that, this is where we expect to find the trough, and probably seeing some of the troughing right there. Out over Texas, subsidence working across this area. And out over the East Coast, looks like that jet stream action right there, crossing Virginia and heading up towards New York. So there's the subsidence side of the jet and the ascending side. And then a quick look at infrared imagery. Not much to see, but up in the high plains, yeah, we've got our next system inbound right there, and some more activity up there in North Dakota. So other than that, it is actually a pretty quiet evening, but maybe I can shift stuff up to the northern plains. Let me do that real quick. Hopefully we don't have any problems with the stream. We're just loading a few high-resolution rapid refresh frames. Okay. Keep an eye on that dropped frame meter down here. And we're still at 0, so that's good. Okay. So let's see what happens in the short term there in the Dakotas. Well, it looks like we've got our cold front up to the north. I'm going to put that something like that, pretty much along the interstate, I think I-95 up there. And then the other front, I think that extends probably something down like this. Okay, so that's the setup right there. Probably 2 baroclinic lows, one there, one here. And of course the so-called overrunning area, that's going to be this region right up here. So we're going to watch as this comes together overnight. Okay, moving forward. Fast moving. We can see a lot of movement from hour to hour. Here's the first impulse heading into Iowa, southwestern Minnesota. And let's see, the tail end, I guess we're probably looking at maybe something like this right here. And I think we're getting some mesoscale effects underneath this rain and snow band. Probably producing a bit of a cold pool there at the surface, and we're getting that ridging there as a result. So if you actually analyzed, you might find a little bit of an outflow region underneath that stuff. So that's probably distorting the pressure field to a certain extent. So here's that system moving into the Twin Cities around 10 o'clock, 9 to 10, and picking up there towards 1 in the morning. Pretty heavy band coming into that area. And let's see where we're at this point. Fronts, I'm probably going to go maybe something like that, or possibly up into Nebraska like that. And then our warm front, I think, is probably lifted up towards Minneapolis there, something like that. So that front will be approaching around 3 to 4 in the morning up there, and then the winds will be turning around to the north, and then we'll be seeing those really gusty winds just blowing in there about 7 to 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Fortunately, not much of a wraparound field there, so that's going to limit the blizzard potential probably a bit, but maybe some drifting snow due to that dry snowfall with that system. And then behind that, there it is, lots of cold air advection coming in to Iowa, the Dakotas, and Minnesota tomorrow. And let's head to the rest of the charts. Of course, what I want to know is when the next severe weather event will happen. See if we can figure that out. Here comes the cold air. This is later tonight. And you can see that system moving in through southeastern Minnesota there. And this is a rather large high pressure area, 1044 millibars. So that's definitely going to be felt across the central and eastern U.S. So this will be moving across the Great Lakes tomorrow. Cold front coming in through Chicago around midday, through St. Louis and southern Kansas. And then overnight, that'll be pulling up into Quebec and Ontario. Tomorrow night, the cold front will be pushing through Rochester and Pittsburgh, Louisville, all the way down to Little Rock and Oklahoma City. Then it looks like it'll possibly be stalling out around the Red River. The models were kind of showing this yesterday. So maybe another wave coming together, I'm not sure. So this is Sunday. So things should stay kind of warm there in Texas. There's that south wind coming up. And with that, there will be moisture streaming northward, so possibly some rain along that boundary later in the weekend into Monday. Then we get, looks like round 2 of cyclogenesis out in the Rockies around Monday. So the fronts will be kind of positioned like that. And let's watch that come together. Looks like the main impact will be Kansas and Missouri for Tuesday. And we'll be keeping a close eye on Texas too, because that could be a decent dry line setup. In fact, here's an MCS going for Tuesday night along this Canadian cold front that just surges southward. So it's going to be kind of cool later next week. This is kind of a big prevailing high pattern. All of this is a cold air mass. So that's going to have to take time to disperse and diverge. So that'll keep things kind of shut down there for that first week of April. And lo and behold, another system. Another strong one, 1035 millibars. So this is definitely not a good pattern for widespread severe weather. These storms here, you can see that that's along the cold front and somewhat behind. So this is probably kind of an antifront setup. We are getting kind of far out there as far as forecast time, so we'll have to wait and see. And then after that, some very strong cyclogenesis there around Colorado on the 7th and 8th. So those will pull out into Missouri and Illinois for the 9th. And behind that, more Canadian air coming in. A couple fast-moving Pacific systems. So I think we're looking at probably at least 2 weeks here before we get into more of a stable, spring-like, chaseable weather pattern. I do want to take a quick look at the upper air charts and see if there's a way to do that without destroying the stream. Let's see, how can I pull up the upper air chart? I don't think I can really do that. I think it's going to pull in too many frames. Let me try INSEP. We hardly ever look at their upper air charts, but might as well give it a shot here. This website, by the way, mag.insep.noaa.gov. So that's the official source of upper air data, or model data. Okay, bringing that up. I want to look at things about 2 or 3 days from now, maybe on Monday, and just get a look at the upper air pattern. And this shows the very strong Hudson Bay vortex there, right there north of Ontario. So this is a kind of a very large pattern, and you can see the extent of that large long wave troughing. And embedded in that, we've got these smaller scale waves, and those are what end up moving into the plains and giving us really good development of surface systems. So this is going to be kind of an ongoing thing here for the next week or two. Let me see if I can pull up one more here. It's not a very easy site to navigate. Let me go out to 160 hours. This is on the 6th. And at this point, we're seeing the Hudson Bay vortex kind of breaking down and moving to the east a bit. And you can see the Pacific system starting to open up a little bit more. So this is what's going to get us into a little bit more of a progressive pattern. And then as we get the next big trough on the Pacific coast, then I think we're going to be looking at spring to finally come back. Okay, well, that's about all I got for this evening. Just to let you know, I may end up taking a break tomorrow. Kind of have some little bit of family time there. And in any case, we'll be back on Sunday, which is, of course, usually a very busy day on this channel, and we'll see how things look. Okay, just a quick look at chat. Tom J is with us. Las Cruces, David Moore. Mike Estwick asking about weather topics. What topics to focus on? Well, I'll let you know on Sunday. I'm sure we're not going to have any much weather then. All right. Anyway, thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you Sunday. Have a good evening.